President Trump, once again, has no public events scheduled for today. We haven't seen him for a couple of weeks, at least officially, as the coronavirus pandemic worsens. This is the 12th time since Election Day, just over 2 weeks ago, that he skipped a public appearance. Meanwhile, President-elect Biden is set to speak with governors today about the crisis. Yesterday, he heard firsthand from first responders about the human cost of fighting the virus. Ed O'Keefe reports.
I have not been tested yet, and I have been on the front lines in the ICU since February.
You're kidding me.
President-elect Joe Biden virtually coming face-to-face with the crisis he's set to inherit in January as he heard directly from nurses on the front lines of the coronavirus pandemic.
There is something seriously wrong when nurses have to take to the streets to beg for protection in the middle of a pandemic. I'm sorry, I'm so emotional.
No.
It's just...
You got me emotional.
Biden said that the Trump administration's refusal to certify his victory means he cannot yet coordinate with federal agencies responding to the pandemic, meaning the distribution of a vaccine could be delayed.
We've been unable to get access to the kinds of things we need to know about the depth of the stockpiles. We know there's not much at all.
As the virus ravages the country, President Trump remains out of public view and made no mention of the pandemic. Instead, he spent the day once again tweeting baseless and unfounded accusations of voter fraud. His tweets come as a new poll finds that while 7 in 10 Americans as a whole agree Mr. Biden won the election, when it comes to Republicans, nearly 7 in 10 say they're concerned that the election was rigged. The president's campaign continues to spend time and money trying to reverse the election results, securing a recount in 2 counties in Wisconsin where Mr. Biden won by more than 180,000 votes. Meanwhile, today, the president-elect is set to speak with 9 Democratic and Republican governors about the pandemic. Mr. Biden says he'll keep pushing state leaders for stricter COVID restrictions.
So one of the things I'm going to be doing is thanking the governors who already moved, but calling on all the leaders in the states to have mandatory masking, testing, tracing, social distancing.
So Ed's joining me now from Wilmington, Delaware, with more. We're going to get into the governors in a moment, but first I want to ask you about that emotional meeting yesterday between President-elect Biden and those risking their lives to fight the pandemic, the first responders there. Tell us more about those frontline workers and what they said to Mr. Biden and what they want to see him do on his first day in office.
Sure. Well, look, they represent firefighters, emergency room nurses, educators and school nurses, at-home care workers as well. All of them, by the way, representatives of labor unions that have endorsed the president-elect or endorsed him during the presidential campaign. And it's one of several of these kinds of virtual meetings that he's held over the course of the campaign and since the transition began with workers who also happen to be representatives of these large labor unions that he worked with and that helped him win the election a few weeks ago. But they discussed the concerns of the fact that a lot of them haven't been tested themselves, even as they treat infected patients, that there's a lack or there's a growing lack of access to personal protective equipment and other supplies that medical workers need, concerns for the mental health of a lot of these first responders who show up to transport people from their homes to hospitals if they fall ill with COVID or some other illness, and there's concerns about being exposed to them in this kind of environment. So a lot of the sort of practical, real-world, on-the-ground concerns brought to Mr. Biden in a way that President Trump has never really been confronted with it. And I think what the president-elect and his team were trying to do is say, look, we are aware, keenly aware, of the real-world effects that people are suffering through, not only as patients but as caregivers, and he's vowing to do more about that by ensuring that cities and states, hospital systems, paramedics get the help they need once his administration takes over. But the one other notable thing he said a few times or alluded to over the course of this is the truncated transition. The fact that the Trump administration is blocking the Biden team from getting access to these federal agencies to get a sense of what's going on means potentially that distribution of the vaccine could be delayed if they don't have a good sense of how exactly that vaccine distribution preparation is going and whether it aligns with what he would want to do.
You know, Ed, you talked about the way that the president had not been confronted in this way. And I think back to the beginning of this pandemic, April or May, when the president hosted some frontline workers, including a nurse in the Oval Office. And she mentioned in a very polite way that getting the proper PPE was still sporadic, and he rebuked her. He said, "Oh, it's sporadic for you, but that's not what I'm hearing." A very different reaction to the president-elect, who's, you know, appeared as if he was almost wiping away tears. But I digress. Let's get on to these governors. The president-elect is going to be speaking with a group of governors, only 9. Why only 9, and who's he going to be speaking to?
Because they are the executive committee of the bipartisan or nonpartisan National Governors Association, which represents all 50 state governors across the country. Currently, it's chaired by a Democrat, Andrew Cuomo of New York. The vice chair is Asa Hutchinson, Republican of Arkansas. There will be others, including Republican Governor Kay Ivey of Alabama, Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico. Both of them are Democrats. Lujan Grisham is actually on the Biden transition team as well, advising on potential positions for various people across the Biden administration. Republicans Larry Hogan and Charlie Baker of Maryland and Massachusetts, respectively, are also part of this group. They notably are two of the 3 Republican governors who said that they did not vote for President Trump's re-election. And then Jared Polis of Colorado, a Democrat, is also a member of this group. They'll be holding a virtual conversation with him today. This essentially is the Biden version of gubernatorial outreach, similar to what the Trump administration has done by holding frequent conference calls with governors across the country to update them on the federal response to the pandemic. Those calls have been fewer and farther between in recent months, also been conveying less information, and frankly, administration, based on my conversations with people who work for these governors, has been taking less of the feedback on those calls. We'll see what the call is like today and what President-elect Biden pushes them to do. He has said, as he said in our report, that he wants to push governors to enact tougher COVID restrictions, face mask requirements, social distancing, changes to who and how many people can be inside various places like restaurants and bars and gyms and whatnot. Remember, he's already gotten some resistance from Republican governors who say they're not necessarily going to take cues from the president-elect, and he has said if that's the case, he'll go to county leaders, to city leaders, to town leaders, hoping to push them to adopt some of these measures, as we've seen some Republican governors do, and they've admitted reluctantly in recent days because of the spike of cases in their states.
Yeah, there's only so much he will be able to do as president federally. Leading by example is pretty strong, but he's going to need buy-in from these governors to get any sort of national mandate underway. Before we let you go, I want to talk about this. So, you know, Congress doesn't seem to be doing much in terms of economic relief at this point. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren said that cutting student debt would be the, quote, single biggest stimulus for the hurting economy. It's something that the Biden-Harris team had sort of floated, certainly Biden while he was running. Where are we on that? Is that something that they may consider?
Yeah. Well, it is, but it's not necessarily everything Senator Warren and liberals like her would want. During the campaign, then candidate Biden proposed about $10,000 in student loan forgiveness for most eligible students or former students. And that is actually part of, or similar plan is part of the House-passed legislation that's been sitting since about May, ready for consideration in the Senate. So you get about $10,000 of your student loan forgiven, believing that that would help, as Senator Warren said, stimulate the economy. But there's a more aggressive proposal from her and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer that would essentially forgive up to $50,000 of student loan debt, believing that that would help stimulate about it would cost about an estimated $1 trillion. So there's a big price tag for the government attached to this. Biden has said, again, He's cool with the $10,000 cut, hasn't gone as far as the $50,000, and he's getting egged on by fellow Democrats who say, look, when he becomes president, he could sign away that debt with executive action. He hasn't gone that far, hasn't committed to that. And this is a very good example, Anne-Marie, not only of a real-world concern for a lot of people, something that could potentially help millions of Americans who are struggling to keep or to find a job in the midst of this and pay all their bills. But it's also a very good example of the subplot, of the drama that will go on among Democrats, feuding with a more moderate, centrist Democrat who's trying to appeal to everybody, who's trying to sort of, find ways to work with Republicans, at the same time potentially upsetting fellow Democrats who'd like to see him go a little farther. And they were hoping if the party had won more seats in Congress, if they had won more state legislatures, that they'd be able to enact those more bolder proposals. Now we'll see if that can happen. But on student loan debt, foreign policy, domestic policy, all sorts of things, you're going to continue to see these disagreements among Democrats, and it's going to be one of the more intriguing political stories to watch in the coming year as Biden and his party adjust to taking over power in Washington.
Most definitely. Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much.